Hello everyone, welcome to Farmer Office Hours. Hey Justin, how are you doing today? Yeah, very well, thank you. Emil, can you hear us okay?
Okay.
We'll just give everyone a minute to join us. Lovely to see so many familiar faces in the audience. Okay, do you want to kick us off, Justin?
Definitely. Welcome everybody to our Farmer Office Hours. As always, we want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to join us today. As you all know, we're here to answer all of your questions, give you some insights into our farming process. You know, we've had an exciting week and a half with the launch of Gemini 3G. So we're here to kind of dive into the details for Gemini 3G. And we'll also maybe touch on staples a little bit as well. Joining us today, we have myself, Jim, and Emil. How's it going, Emil and Jim?
Well, thank you, Justin. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to have you with us today. So, for those of you who may not have noticed, you know, as always, we keep an eye on our announcements channel. That's where we'll always send any updates and things along those lines. As well as our Twitter and Telegram. We're trying to kind of beef those areas up a little bit over the past month or so, and trying to, you know, increase our Twitter presence and also give Telegram a little bit more love that it deserves. And as always, also check out our forums at forum.subspace.network, as we're trying to also make that a home for our common questions and common issues that we're facing. As general with our farmer office hours, you know, if you have any questions or anything along those lines, feel free to throw them into the chat along the side or raise your hand. You know, we'll definitely take some time out to go through all of our questions and answer any burning questions you all may have. To kick us off, we'll get started with the status of Gemini 3G. Jim, do you want to give us some updates on where Gemini 3G is at currently?
I certainly can, thanks Justin. Yeah, so we've been running 3G for a couple of weeks now. We stopped rewards on Gemini 3F and started incentivized testnet rewards on Gemini 3G last Thursday on a community call. Hopefully many of you were there for that. And our network in numbers right now we have 3,533 nodes have followed us over from Gemini 3F to 3G. I shouldn't say that really, because there may well be many new nodes as well, of course. There's a constant stream of newcomers in Discord. The space pledged is currently 1,622 terabytes, 1.62 petabytes, which is wonderful. I see we're getting some traction. And the latest version of the software is November the 7th. So there was a release yesterday. So anyone who's not upgraded, it's definitely worth picking up. You're going to see a number of improvements. Check the release notes for details. But not least of which is you're going to see less of the error messages that we've been getting on our node and farmer. So definitely worth checking out. I'll drop a link in a link to the latest release in the chat in a sec. And we like to talk about our whale wallets. I'm just going to drop the link in the chat so you can check yourselves. This actually starts on page 2, and the reason it starts on page 2 is because last time I checked, page 1 was just purely team wallets. So I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, okay. So if you actually go back a page to page 1 from that link, you'll see that there are a number of wallets which have got locked tokens. Any wallet with locked tokens are wallets that we've created at Genesis for team testing. So they haven't earned their tokens, so they're not farmers. They're not participating in the incentivized testnet. So for all intents and purposes, when you're ranking yourself, you can ignore those wallets with locked TSSC. But I can see that in position number 1, it's TOJ5 with 10,371 tokens. That's an astounding amount of tokens that gathered so quickly. I know that there's a certain amount of conversation and speculation about how that wallet's gathered tokens so quickly. My guess is that there are a large number of farmers with all plots directed at that wallet. But yeah, if any one of our whales wants to, present themselves or publicly or privately, we'd be very interested to hear, what kind of setup you're using to gather so many tokens in such a short amount of time. So yeah, that is the networking numbers as of the 8th of November. Thanks, Justin.
Definitely. And as Jim mentioned, we had our latest release, our November 7th release that went out yesterday. That release is featuring some DSN syncing optimizations and improvements. There's also some improvements on the farming side, particularly for users who are running timekeepers. Timekeepers being one of the new things that was included with Gemini 3G. It bundled up with our proof of time protocol that was also involved with that version. So timekeepers, those users who are wanting to run that, will definitely see a performance improvement. We've also got a proving benchmark added. So there's actually a couple benchmarks now that you can run on the farmer in Gemini 3G. This is ideally there to help you kind of measure performance on your plot and on your farming process, just to kind of get an idea of exactly what you're looking at as far as timings go and things along those lines. The development team was really nice to add that, especially for, as we're updating from different versions. It's always a good idea to, just to measure that improvement and see how it's going. And on the topic of timekeeping as well, Jim, I was thinking we could take a couple minutes and just kind of detail what that process is and exactly what it's for the farmers. Did you want to give that a shot?
Yeah, sure. So timekeeping is, I'm going to read from the docs for a moment, but it's an essential component of securing the protocol. Without at least one timekeeper online, there would be no block production. So who can run a timekeeper? While it's possible to run a farmer or operator node with timekeeping activated, the ideal is that a high-spec dedicated machine is used to mitigate processing loads, altering the quality of the work they do. So timekeeping is all about ensuring. So it is part of proof of time. Now, proof of time is quite an expansive subject. I'd suggest I'll drop the Subnomicon link into the chat after I've given you this little introduction. But the idea behind it is that someone could try and perform a long-range attack on the network by fabricating or creating their own chain. And proof of time means that when they try and create that chain, they're actually going to it's actually going to take them they're going to have to prove the amount of time between the blocks. I see Nazar's in the audience. Please correct me if I get any of this wrong. But the idea is that it would actually take them as long to build this fake chain as it would to just participate in the true chain, which means that they can't inject a false chain into our network. And timekeepers are super important to doing that because the idea is that they are running a AES function which is very tightly measurable, a certain number of iterations, and that means that they're proving how long how long it's taken them to produce each block. Hopefully that slightly dodgy explanation went down well. Yeah, as I say, well, previous networks did have a lot of forks, and it's exactly that. So a malicious actor could try and pull everyone over to their own fork with their own malicious intent. So who should run a timekeeper? It's not an incentivized role at the moment, and it's someone who can dedicate a fast core to the cause. So it's important that our timekeepers run on CPUs with a higher clock speed, so they can't be beaten by other more powerful hardware. So yeah, if that feels like it's you, please do check out the docs and make yourself known, because you'd be an unsung hero. Or in fact, I will sing a song about you, so you would be a sung hero. We definitely need to build out the timekeeper role on the network. Our hope is that we're going to have a number of timekeepers, geographically distributed, decentralized, all for the health of the network, of course. And remember, this is a test net, so we're keen to hear your feedback. I know Nazar's just in the latest release, I think it is, or actually maybe in the previous release, has fixed a bug with being a timekeeper and not earning rewards. So I'm pretty sure that you will earn rewards as long as you're farming as well as timekeeping, of course. So that was a whistle-stop tour. Actually, I should probably talk a little bit about the exact hardware requirements. So it's similar to a farmer insofar as we haven't benchmarked this yet, but we expect that it shouldn't require more than 8 gig of RAM. You're going to need to be able to run a node as well. So you're going to need to store the blockchain history. I believe you probably be able to prune. I'm not sure. Maybe Nazar will confirm that in the chat. But yeah, there's actually some very good. I'm going to find it in a sec, but there's you can actually pin the process. Okay, a prune node is fine, wonderful. The storage requirements should be quite low, or should remain quite low. So there's actually a way to there's a parameter. It's in the forum post, which I will drop. That allows you to pin timekeeping to a particular core in your CPU. And Nazar has given us the information on which cores in your CPU are fastest. So we're very interested to see people with 14th gen i9s running this, running timekeepers for us. but yeah, that's our whistle-stop tour of timekeeping. Hopefully that made sense. But as always, we're really keen for questions. I see we've had a couple already. Please do pop them in the chat, or if you want to come up on stage and share any experiences of your farming, or you've got some burning question about either farming on Gemini 3G, migrating from 3F to 3G, stake wars, of course, our incentivized staking competition, which is penned to start very soon. Yeah, please do pop your questions in the chat or ask to come up on stage. Thanks, Justin.
Of course. Hearing you sing might be an incentive just for me to run my timekeeper there. If we're getting a guaranteed gym show. Additionally, another thing to mention with timekeeping too is that it also widens the solution window for the farmer a little bit. So it also has that benefit for farmers to where it allows farmers to actually know, which block came first and things along those lines, which has some nuanced implications as far as, response times and some clock speeds and things along those lines as far as submitting solutions on the farmer side. So it's always great to see those improvements coming down the pipeline. So some of the common questions that we've been seeing, I think we'll run through, and then I think we'll hop into a little demo with Emil for some Stake Wars action. But first, some of the common issues we've been seeing around lately that I wanted to just kind of address for the community. And as Jim mentioned, if you have any other burning questions, feel free to raise your hand, throw them in the chat, send a messenger pigeon. We're happy to answer. Number one common question we're getting currently is, where is Pulsar? As we've seen in the past few months, the development team's been awesome about getting Pulsar out at the same time as the advanced CLI snapshots. Unfortunately, for the time being, Pulsar is currently undergoing some bug fixing. It is actually having some issues with syncing due to some of the changes that were made in the latest versions. That and compounded with the fact that 3F to 3G was quite a significant change. So there is a little bit of work to be done on the Pulsar side. Fear not, the development team is cracking away at it and currently making progress. But we don't have that available just yet, but it is coming as quick as the development team can muster. Obviously, they've got a lot under their wing currently with Gemini 3F, the domains, proof of time, and all of the other improvements they've been making. But Pulsar is still on the roadmap, and they will be hopefully have it out here soon for you once those bugs are resolved and taken care of. Another one that's kind of a known issue that we're seeing currently is that sometimes the sync from the DSN is stopping and no longer making any progress. This has been identified by the development team. We have an issue for it here in GitHub, issue 2192. It's been reported by Nazar, so the development team is aware of it. Overall, while they're still investigating it, for the time being, if you do run into this issue, generally it occurs on a node restart where you'll see the DSN stop making progress. If this occurs, just give it about 30 minutes, and if there's no progress, just restart the node again, and we should see it slowly start to come back. While this one can be a little frustrating, as I mentioned, the development team is taking a look at it and currently working on a fix. It's just not quite available just yet, but we should hopefully have something new for you here in the coming versions.
Yeah, please remember that we're moving fast here. So these kind of bugs, we don't want to introduce them, but they are kind of expected. So we appreciate everyone reporting those issues, and it allows us to identify the patterns. Okay, Nazar's just dropped in the chat as well that we hope to fix it this week, so we're looking at it. The next item that we've got that is a kind of something that's cropped up a lot is this Quinn UDP send message error. So I know that I'm plagued with this on my nodes. It is just a pesky message. It doesn't mean that your node isn't functioning as it should. It just means that we've got a warning that something's happening that we might not be expected. So I believe I've seen Nazar's typing, but I believe it's going to be fixed in the next release. I think I saw that. So hopefully we'll see the end of our fixing latest release already. Okay, excellent. I need to check that. So is that the November 7th release, Nazar? In fact, Nazar, would you like to come up on stage? I put you on the spot. Okay.
Sure. Hey guys. Yeah, that one is fixed. There is another one from Quinn that is about duplicated packets. It's already fixed on main. Next time we make a new release, it will be included as well. Those are just annoying warnings. They shouldn't be printed at that level. It just happens to be the case.
Thanks, Nazar. So is that all of the Queen messages? So we see a Queen UDP and a Queen Proto.
Yeah, I think there were just two. One was Windows specific. We fixed that in latest release. The other one is just debug message, which was printed as warnings because maintainers of the library didn't expect it to happen. It's something that ideally shouldn't happen, but in networking configuration in real world, it does happen that some machines along the way between two farmers or two nodes are sending the same packet twice for some reason. It just complains when that happens, but there is nothing wrong with that necessarily in terms of the protocol functionality.
Thanks, Nazar. I know that Nazar has been very busy in the forum, so yeah, there's some really great conversation going on over there. We tend to see that the issues tend to surface in Discord, but we like to get them documented in the forum, and that's where we're kind of debugging and trying to really get a clean version of what the problem is without all the chaos of Discord. It can get quite hectic with many conversations going on concurrently. Nazar, are there any other kind of front of mind issues that you think we should highlight at this stage?
Just the sensing, it seems to get stuck at some point. It's usually not like used once you have synced successfully, unless something like really bad happens, like you lost internet connection for an hour or something. But we're still looking into that. That is probably something that blocks our Pulsar release as well. It just happens there with higher probability. Either way, we'll get to the bottom of it and we'll fix it. Otherwise, nothing major that I'm aware of.
Thanks, Nazar. Yeah, and if you find that you've got an error message, tend to search first in Discord and search the forum. There's a very good chance that you'll find someone else has already experienced it, and you'll be able to get a status on the forum officially of where we are. Okay, Justin, I see we've got one more common issue. Did you want to round us out there?
This one's actually been a little bit of a known issue for quite a while, but I've been seeing questions pop up for it, so I just wanted to mention it while we have you all here. Some users on Windows, when they're running their farmer, they'll hit, get all their commands and everything all ready, and they'll hit enter to send it, and nothing will happen. They'll just get a blank output with no program running, nothing else coming through the terminal. This is actually a pretty common issue on Windows that we've experienced. Overall, what's occurring here is you just don't have the latest Visual C++ redistributable package, if you have that error, of course. So overall, all you'll have to do if you run into that one is download the C++ package that is in reference. We actually have it linked in our documentation, but just for continuity's sake, I'll throw it here in the chat as well. It's kind of a hard one to troubleshoot, so I just wanted to mention it because, when you expect at least some kind of error or something along those lines and you hit enter, you just get a blank response. It's hard to know where to turn and where to go to get that resolved. But ultimately, just a dependency issue, nothing major to be too concerned about, and generally pretty easily resolved. Luckily, that one mostly will face those users on Windows. We haven't quite seen something like this pop up on the Linux or Mac OS side just yet.
The funny thing is, when you run it in the terminal, it will say nothing, just exits for no reason. But if you go back to your file manager, you try to open it as a regular application, you will actually get a nice message. So that's how we figured out that it is a problem with dependencies. I'm not sure why they don't print that message in the terminal. Just not difficult, really.
Just Windows, making our lives difficult like they're good at. But beyond that, while we wait for some more questions to come up, we've got a couple here that we'll answer here in just a moment. I wanted to hand the floor over to Emil, who's going to detail a little demo for us on the staking side of things.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's usually tricky with the live demos, but hopefully everything will work as expected. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. All right, so as you know, we have an ongoing stake wars, and at the moment, each of you is trying to farm as many tokens as possible on Gemini 3G in order to have a minimum stake to become an operator. And in a few weeks from now, everyone will be able to register as an operator as long as they have the minimum required stake on their wallet balance. But we just decided that that now is a good time to give you a quick demo on how would you register an operator, just to give you a heads up and you know what it looks like. So first, let's have a look at the minimum requirements required for the operators. And these requirements are available on our documentation. You will see that pretty modern CPUs are required, 4 physical cores at 3.4 gigahertz that should support multi-threading. And in terms of storage, we require 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, and generally the latency is more important than through output. 32 gigabytes of RAM, and the pre-stable and fast network connection. Though, as you can notice, there's a few notes and tips at the top, and we didn't really benchmark any of it. So the requirements that we're listing here is our best assumption, which means that you are more than you're more than welcome to give a try, even if your requirements, even if your computer doesn't satisfy the minimum requirements. And we'll be really happy to hear your feedback if you were able to run an operator successfully on another system. Okay, so let's go into the actual guide to register an operator. And once again, everything is available on our documentation. The first thing you need to do to register an operator is to create a key pair. And this key pair is needed to participate in a bundle production. And to generate a key pair, we'll hop to the terminal, and we'll use a key generate scheme SR25519 command. And this will generate us secret space and basically all of the keys that are needed to register an operator. And the next key is the next step is to insert this key to the key store. And in order to insert it, we need to use this command. So let me just go back to the terminal. I'll use Subspace node, key insert. Of course, I'll be making some typos. -- story, and I'll copy the secret phrase that we've just generated, and I'll copy the rest of the command from the docs, not to make any typos. And there you have it. So now the key pair is insert to our key store. The next step is to go back to the browser, and we first can go and check what are the available domains for the network. So what are the domains where you can become an operator? And just as a heads up, and we've already seen this question popping up, once the registration for the operator is enabled, we will give you the specific domain that each of you will be using to register an operator. So you won't have this no doubt which domain to use, but I thought it's a good idea to show you where it's coming from nevertheless. So in order to see what are the available domains, you can proceed to the polka.js website. You go under developer and change state, and you need to query domains with the function domain registry. And by default, the option will be included, but you need to exclude the option and just query it. And at the bottom, you will see the output of your query. And the first number here would correspond to the domain ID. So if I scroll a little bit down, you will see that there is domain with the ID 0, and there is a domain with the ID 1. So at the moment, I'll be demoing registration on the domain with the ID 1. And at the moment, you won't be able to actually register an operator because we've not made it available to everyone just yet. So you see that at the moment we specify or like whitelist the wallets that can register an operator on this domain. But once again, it will be permissionless once we step into the next phase of stake wars.
Sorry, Emil.
Yes,
sorry, Emil. This is a question that came up from the community earlier. Is why have we got? So there's a worry that, of course, that the operator list at the moment is permissioned, and the intent is, of course, that when we start Stake Wars Phase 2, when we invite operators onto the network, we're going to remove that allow list. So it's going to be truly permissionless. The only barrier to entry is making sure that you've got enough min stake, which means that all you need to worry about right now is trying to farm as many coins as possible. But it is a question that came up, is why is there an allow list? It's basically so that we can make sure that everyone starts at the same time. So you can't be running an operator on the Stake Wars Gemini 3G Nova. You can't be running on that before everyone else and trying to get some advantage. Hopefully that makes sense, but please do pop a question in the chat if you need further clarification. Sorry to interrupt, Emil. Do carry on.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Jim. All right, so now we can actually proceed to registering an operator. And in order to register an operator, we'll go back to the Polkadot.js portal. We'll go to Developer tab and click on Extrinsic. We'll select the wallet we'd like to use. We'll select the domain as an extrinsic, and we'll select Register Operator. And here is the bunch of the parameters that you need to set up. And as I showed before, so I'll be registering the operator on the domain with ID 1. And the next parameter I need to put is the staking amount. So I would like to stake 1 TSSC, but because we use type 100 U128, I need to put 18 zeros. So hopefully I'll get it right.
It's about the resolution of subspace credits. We have 18 decimal places, so 1 is actually 1 and 18 zeros in this particular instance. It's like Satoshi in Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you, Nazar. Okay, next step is to put the signing key. And I'll be using the signing key that we've created in the terminal. So you need to grab your public key or hex and copy it and put it in the browser. So it's really important to make sure to use the same signing key that you have on your key store on your machine. Then I'll put the minimum nominator stake. So let's set it to 1 as well. Yeah, it's a little bit painful to do this manually, like type this manually each time, because copying and pasting is not supported. Otherwise, it would have been much easier for me. All right, so now we have everything ready, and we can finally sign the transaction, submit transaction, and register an operator. Make sure to click on submit transaction and not on the submit and sign, because we need to have the signed transaction. Now I just need to confirm the password for the wallet and approve the transaction. All right, awesome. The transaction did go through correctly. So now I registered as an operator. As you see, my balance is lowered by one TSCC because we're now staking one TSCC. That's great. Now we're registered as an operator. And how can you check if what's your operator ID and like if everything is indeed worked correctly? You can check it two ways. First, you can go to the Polkadot again, go to the Explorer tab, and in a recent event, in about 10 minutes from now, so when the next when the next transaction comes and being displayed here, you will see that there will be an event operator domain operator registered. But like it's you don't really you can't really search for the event, so it's a little bit not the best UI, I would say. So alternatively, you can go to Subscan and go under the tools, blockchain and extrinsic. And in the list of the events here, you will see an action domains register operator with the with the green check mark. So that's my last attempt that I did about like an hour and 60 minutes ago. Here you can see that, and you can open it and see if your signing key corresponds to the signing key that you have in your terminal. The operator we just registered will be visible here in about like 10 minutes, as I mentioned, when the next block is included here. And the very last part is to actually start your local node as an operator. And in order to start it, I'll just make sure that I do copy the public key again, and I'll just open another tab in the terminal. And there is a bunch of different commands that different flags that you have to specify to start your node as an operator. All of these commands are once again available on our documentation, and I'll just put the node key here as the last remaining param, and I click on enter. Okay, so yeah, something indeed went wrong. Did I use a wrong key? No, I think that's correct. Let's try again. Is there any space that I'm not seeing or am I missing?
Looks like a permission denied error.
Yeah.
You have a space after /n before subspace node.
Oh, yep. Taking us out.
Live demos.
And there you have it. So now you're running a node as an operator. Yeah, I think that's all from my end. Yeah, sorry, demos never really go smoothly, but I think it was good enough.
I think you did very well there, Emil. It's very brave of you to to demo it. Of course, an errant space catching us out. So could I just recap what we did there? So first of all, we had to make sure that we had some Gemini 3G coins, and we need those to stake, which was the transaction you submitted on Polkadot.js, if I understood correctly. And
yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, and when I stake those, I'm also providing the signing key that I then provide as the parameter to my node, and that is how my node is then associated with that operator registration. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct, Jim. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And then, of course, I believe your signing key is also then like your identifier on Stake Wars. So I believe your reward pool gets attached to it. I think Jeremy was in the audience earlier. Maybe he'll confirm. But okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So for anyone who's considering joining Stake Wars when we start it, that's a great guide there. Thank you very much, Emil.
My pleasure, of course.
So does anyone have any questions about being an operator? I see Justin's dropped the drop the docs into the chat there, which is a text-based version of what Emil's just been through. But we're really keen to hear. I see Capybara. I don't know if anyone saw at the start of the call. If you stroll up the chat, you'll see Capybara's got an open air rig ready for his operator. But maybe we should take some more questions, Justin. I don't know. Can we launch into some? Yeah.
So we actually have one tangentially related from Lazy Penguin. Is can the operator node be tracked in the general telemetry? Generally, yes. The telemetry picks up the node. It doesn't technically even care if you're farming or not. So given that operators are also just running a node, you should be able to find them in the telemetry, obviously just by searching based off of the name. Obviously, it's worth noticing though, if you're getting the DNS, telemetry dial error, then that particular node might not populate. But that's generally will self-resolve. You should see it pop up on our telemetry server there. So any node, farmer, operator, neither, you should always be able to see them on that telemetry server there.
Thanks, Justin. I've scrolled right back up the chat and I can see that the very first question we have is from Jan of Synergy Lounge. Will you make differences based on the performance/token later in the rewards for the farmer/operator? So after completion of the test net as mainnet token, if so, is there any more detailed information? Hardware is getting more and more expensive. Yes, I agree, Jan. So I think what you're asking is how do the rewards work? So there are a couple of posts here. So you mentioned farmer and operator. I'm going to try and answer your questions, and now I'm going to drop a couple of links into the chat. Hopefully Justin will pick up the next question while I do that. How are you incentivized to farm on Gemini 3G and Gemini 3F? But really what that means is you're participating in our incentivized testnet, which is for farmers. And the reward structure goes that you will be earning a proportional amount of the reward pool that we're allocating to our incentivized Gemini 3 incentivized testnet. The reward pool is growing by 0.1% token supply every week. Our expectation is that the Gemini 3 testnet will run for around 24 weeks. We're not sure. It may be a little shorter. It may be a little longer. We're not entirely sure yet. We're gonna have to see how things develop. But essentially, you're going to. So there's a number of block and vote rewards being won all the time by wallets. I imagine one of those wallets is yours, Jan. And what we're going to do is we're going to split the reward pool, whatever that ends up being, across all of the wallets that have earned block or vote rewards, proportional to the number, the percentage, if you like, of the rewards that you won. So yes, hardware is expensive, and while we hope that many of you are here for the love of Subspace, there are real incentives because those test tokens, or it's not actually the test tokens, it's actually the rewards you're winning. They will get converted to mainnet tokens, so there is a real value there. So that takes care of farmers. Hopefully that makes sense. And the incentivized testnet, and then operators. So operators have a separate reward pool. We've actually got so operators will take part in Stake Wars. Stake Wars has this separate pool, which is 0.6% of supply, and that is going to be split between operators and nominators. Now, operators get an extra phase because we're onboarding operators before we invite nominated stake. But the idea there is that where incentivized testnet for farmers is rewards are allocated proportional to the block and vote rewards you win. For operators and nominators in Stake Wars, you're going to get a percentage of that 0.6% proportional to the transaction fees that you earn. So operators are incentivized on mainnet to execute transactions because they're going to earn a gas fee, very much as you're familiar with from Ethereum. Excuse me. So hopefully that makes sense, Jan. I am going to drop a couple of links in the chat where we've kind of tried to lay that out in forum posts. But please do come back if anything's not clear. While I do that, maybe could you pick up the next question, Justin?
Yeah, and just real quick to add to that as well, I also kind of interpreted his question as asking, if the performance requirements will be changing, or if there'll be any differences, from now versus mainnet. Just in general, to give you all an insight in our general philosophy as far as hardware requirements go, we firmly believe in keeping the barrier to entry as low as possible. So, as far as, what the hardware requirements will be as we continue to move forward, we're trying to keep it as bare minimal as we can technically make, work in a reasonable manner. I know Nazar and all of the development team has spent hours and hours and hours trying to ensure, that an average desktop, laptop, or home PC will be able to run a farmer, and ideally, maybe even an operator. Obviously, that's always a moving target and will continue to evolve, especially as the complexity of the project evolves. But that's just our general approach as far as most hardware requirements go. Is we really want pretty much anybody to be able to participate on the network, and not need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on some amazing super home rig. Instead, your MacBook should be able to do it. But moving on to the next question, Jan, feel free to ask if you have any follow-ups there. We had a quick question from Alexios asking, in the telemetry, it's a good idea to include a search feature that lets users find results from various options like node name, address, and town. So while we do actually have a search feature built into the telemetry, Alexios, it's not very visible. There's no UI, magnifying glass that you can click or anything. But if you just start typing, just start hitting your keyboard, a little search box will pop up, and you can search from there. Can't quite search from name, or I'm sorry, from address rather. You can search from name. I think that's all that works on the search. The address and the towns don't quite search. You can do a little sort by clicking on the header, but we'll definitely take that feedback up to the development team and see if that's something that we can get implemented. To be honest, our telemetry server has been pretty bare bones, so I'm sure we'll see some improvements come for it down the road here. But overall, at least you can search from name to at least hunt down your own node, for example. That's how I personally do it, is punch in my own node name, and then I can see that my node is populating and everything as expected. Another question we have from Capybara, actually. It looks like he was taking a look at the staking and operators guide, and in the hardware requirements there, it's mentioned that it's 32 gigabytes of DDR4 EEC memory. So his question being is it only EEC memory that is supported? My gut intuition says that other memory types should be supported, but Nazar, could you verify that for me?
I mean, the ECC memory basically means that some kinds of memory errors can be detected by the memory module itself and corrected on the fly. That would otherwise potentially crash an application or cause some behavior which is unexpected. So essentially, it is possible that you wrote something into memory, and then you read from memory something a little bit different. Like a few bits might be different, and things of that nature. So for operators, since you can be slashed for misbehavior, it is kind of important to have a machine that is stable. We have seen some reports already from users, and I have seen it myself, where if your memory is unstable, your farmer is like panicking with strange messages. That is the kind of problem you really, really want to avoid for operator. That's why CC memory is like a really, really required. But you can technically run it on any machine. Like you can run it on DDR3. If you can keep up with the network, you can run it on non-ECC memory machine. It's just like up to you to risk or not take that risk.
Definitely. So as Nazar mentioned, yeah, technically doable, yes. Is it suggested? Probably not, as we
I
don't want to see
I
anything get slashed.
I, I think we should go back to a point that Emil made there, which is that we haven't benchmarked this software. You know, this is our test net. This is our first chance to see how how the operator network's going to work at scale, and we're interested to hear everyone's experience. Um, would I run non-ECC on mainnet? I don't think I would, for exactly the reasons that Nazar specified. But on a test net, yeah, I'm not going to be using server kit. I'm going to be using pretty modest rig and just see how I get on, and provide feedback to the team. You know, that's all helpful. So while we've got some minimum spec in the documentation, you can take it with a pinch of salt. If you fancy having a go at being an operator, my advice is try it, see how it goes, see if you can earn some transaction fees. The intention here is that Stake Wars is going to be as inclusive as possible.
Definitely.
So thanks, Kevin. I see though you've got something interesting brewing for your operator there. Okay, we've got another question. Sorry, Nazar, I'm going to defer to you on this one. So do you plan to enable plotting on GPU? I know this is something that comes up quite a lot, and I think it would be best to come direct from you, if possible, on the
Sure.
situation with GPUs.
So the situation is the following: GPU plotting is, or like GPU programming generally is quite difficult and quite different from usual programming of CPUs. And we do know that it is possible to accelerate with the experience from Chia. They have introduced kind of sort of recently GPU support, and it brought a lot of efficiency gains. We kind of expect a similar situation. It's not clear to which degree those improvements will be, but we are engaging the world, like leading team in the world in high performance implementations of different things. We engaged with them already for the sloth implementation for the earlier versions of Subspace. And in this case, we are working with them to figure out what the implementation of plotting on GPU will be. So you can expect that to happen, hopefully before the mainnet launch, but we don't have anything more specific to share right now. But we are looking forward to making GPU plotting an option to improve plotting performance and energy efficiency more generally.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nazar. In a similar vein, we've been asked about will we do you have any plans to create a separate version of the farmer that is optimized for hard drive? So as Penguin, who's changed his name but not his profile picture, so I know who he is still, has commented just underneath, is that the IOPS required are too high for hard drive at the moment. And so when you're searching for solutions on the node, on your farmer, the random read spinning Rust just can't keep up. So currently not planned. I'll never say never, but certainly it's not a priority. It's not an issue we're likely to prioritize high enough before we hit mainnet beta in February.
I would say it's fairly, like almost certainly not gonna happen. The way we plot is actually like very efficient and very friendly to SSDs, but it also is like kind of by accident friendly to hard drives. So you can technically plot on hard drives with no problem whatsoever, but you will not be able to farm at all. Like you literally will read absolutely random stuff, like one piece of data for every single gigabyte you have. So if you have 20 terabytes, it will take you, I don't know, maybe like a few minutes to do the same thing that SSD takes a few seconds. It's just not be possible, and unless we change the consensus algorithm completely, which we don't plan to do, don't expect hard drives to be viable.
Thanks, Nazar, and thanks, Ivan, for the question. So Zorinox has got a great insightful question there. It's not yet clear to me how it's incentivized to generate transactions. That's a great point, Zorinox. How are we going to run stake wars without a number of transactions for our operators to execute? And the answer is that we are building something that's going to generate a load. It's actually going to be quite a trick little bit of kit that allows us to vary the intensity and the complexity of the transactions. So yeah, that's how we're going to generate transactions for stake wars. Hopefully that makes sense. Your follow-up question, I'm not sure about. Proof the network sandstorm. Zorinox, maybe you can, or does it? Maybe someone else understands what that
Yeah,
what that
that's
question is
the issue that is basically about someone sending a lot of transactions with like really low zero fees, or like almost zero fees, and just flood the network. Um, I'm not sure we have a very robust protection against that right now, but I do know we talked about this already. This was already brought up to us. And by the mainnet, there will definitely be a solution. I'm not sure we have a solution right now. I might be wrong. Maybe we have.
Thanks, Nazar. So that makes sense. A sandstorm of transactions.
All right, there is actually, I believe, a solution. So the challenge there is that there was, I believe it was in Chia. I might be wrong. There was basically a situation where when you signed a lot of transactions, the fees remain being low. The way it is configured in Gemini 3G is when you have higher and higher utilization of the block space, or like block weight in general, you will see increase in transaction fees. So it kind of should self-regulate, I believe. But I can't comment on whether it fixes the problem completely. But we do have some protection against that already. It's kind of recommended thing to do in any substrate chain, actually.
Thanks, Nazar. Justin, are there any other outstanding questions?
Looks like we have a couple other quick ones here that I think we can knock out pretty quickly. Nlight ND1 asked, just dropped in, wanted to make sure it was asked if there are any concerns on keeping sync with the November release. I noted much better sync, at least on the farmer logs, with October 31st release. As far as that one goes, we would definitely love to see what exact performance issues you may be facing there. In general, on the November 7th release, we should have seen, if anything, a syncing improvement. I wouldn't say a syncing, a loss of speed on syncing there. So I'd definitely be curious to see what you might be experiencing there. If you wanted to hop into Discord or on the forums, we could definitely dive into that with you. In general, at least as far as the broad trend, syncing has been getting better and better as we've continued to go, and as the development team has continued to make strides in improving, but also just optimizing the DSN and the peer-to-peer network. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that as well, so it's hard to say absolutely. It may be the amount of peer connections, your regional connection, your internet connection, hardware issues, things along those lines. Kind of all of that can all factor into the syncing speeds. So it's definitely a hard one to say, outright, but in general, November 7th should have seen a slight improvement, as most of the releases have.
Let me add a little bit to that. There are no known regressions in the November releases. In fact, nothing about that particular part of the sync has changed at all. So any difference that you might observe in terms of ability or not ability to sync are correlation and not causation. Like, it's not caused by new release, it's just coincidence. And we were testing these DSN sync issues I mentioned earlier during the call. They happen to be like random, is the best way I can say it. Like, once you run it, it works fine. The other time you run it with the same absolute settings, configs, everything, the same code, it just doesn't work. So it's just like lack of coincidence. Don't be afraid to upgrade to newer releases. There are no known issues or even changes on the code level that would have caused any of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Nazar. And I think the last question we'll probably squeeze in for the day is Zoran asks, the question about GPU plotting is not, do you Subspace support GPU plotting? The question really is if a closed source plotter appears, which it will, and I tend to agree with him, at least in the long term, what does the project do? Do we keep it fair? How do we keep it fair for the community? I think that's a very valid question, Zoran. As Nazar mentioned, we are currently already working with a very well and experienced team to try and get GPU plotting, explore GPU plotting and how we can implement that and what that looks like. So gut intuition says it should be a non-issue once we get to mainnet, because we'd like to have that supported. And like you mentioned, if we don't support it, someone else will, so we might as well make it fair. But that's also, one of the fun predicaments with open source software is, there's always the chance that someone forks something and makes an improvement somewhere. And if they decide to keep those changes closed source, all we can try and do from our experience is try and, match that experience from the open source side. So as Nazar mentioned, we'll continue to try and explore those kinds of routes, and hopefully have, some more details for you down the line. But for the time being, we'll just kind of have to play it by ear. And obviously, we'll do our best to ensure these kinds of unfairnesses within the ecosystem don't surface too aggressively.
Let me add a little bit to that as well. So there are like two ways to think about fair. One way to think whether it's fair is whether those with closed source plotter would be able to have an advantage over the honest farmer. The only real advantage in this case on the protocol level would be that they would be able to plot faster and more efficiently. But there should be no difference in terms of how much reward they can get in midterm or long term. At the same time, looking at other protocols, I can highlight Mad Max, who is part of our community, but I'm not sure he's on the call today, who wrote an amazing Chia plotting implementation, which is open source and widely used. So we expect that there will be more than one implementation of plotter for Subspace, and I can kind of shout out that we actually have our farmer built as a library, so you can reuse some of the components of it to create a custom farmer if you want. And in fact, our Pulsar is a little bit of that. It actually customizes some things a little bit to make it more efficient for that particular use case. So ideally, like if you have, let's say, a machine with multiple NUMA nodes and you want to optimize it for your particular architecture, or you want to bring in GPU plotting but reuse the rest of the farmer as is, you can totally do all of those things given experience in software development and some time and patience. So we totally expect that there will be some community members which will create those things, but we also are kind of dedicated to build the best official or reference implementation for everyone to be inspired by as well. And yes, experienced team is SuperNation, exactly. They are probably one of the best ones we can find.
Alrighty. Well, as always, we want to thank everybody for taking some time out of their day and hanging out with us here in Farmer Office Hours. As we've shown, we'll be continuing to do these events bi-weekly. Next week, we'll likely have another one, Developer Office Hours, coming up for all the developer-related questions. Thank you to Nazar, Jim, and Emil for coming up today and giving all of your amazing insights. Nazar, I really appreciate the impromptu on-stage join and I guess impromptu AMA as well. It's definitely greatly appreciated. I'm sure the community is always happy to have you here as well. And Emil, thank you for the amazing Stake Wars demo. And Jim, as always, thanks for your help with co-hosting. As always, thank you all, most importantly to our farmers. It's without your all help with that we really need that help for testing. Without you guys, who knows where we would be. As mentioned earlier, stay tuned as the operator side of Stake Wars is coming here down the pipeline here pretty soon. And as always, we're still looking for contributions for our localization. So if you speak multiple languages and feel like you could contribute, we would definitely love to see your help in getting our documentation localized to as many different languages as possible, just so we can continue in our efforts in being a global, decentralized community that has no barriers to entry, including the languages you speak. Uh, as always, thank you everybody. I've been Justin, and we look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.